Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and we are excited for today. We're going to be talking about authenticity and how authenticity really plays into making money, how it plays into being better in business, all the things that are important when it comes to interacting. We're going to talk about from an authenticity standpoint. So today I'm going to actually focus a lot more in on relationships and how authenticity can play into just an interpersonal relationship, maybe a spouse, maybe a child, maybe a friend. I'm going to really focus in on that. Wednesday, we're going to be talking about a book by Gary Vee called Jab, 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 Right Hook. Awesome. I'm excited to do a review on that. And then this Friday, we're going to have an awesome guest on. His name is Michael Marcial. And I would suggest right now, just go out and follow him on Facebook because he is killer. He really knows his stuff. He knows what he's trying to promote. And he's the author and founder of the 5-Figure Workweek. Just really, really stellar at what he does. And he's somebody who and this is why I'm having him on Friday. He is one of the most authentic people that I know. He's absolutely the same, and no matter in what situation you're seeing him, whether you're seeing him online, whether you're in person, whether you're at a friend's birthday party, whether you're just shooting the shiz somewhere as friends, there's always going to be the same person. And that's really important when it comes to authenticity. So that's why I'm having him on. I'm excited for you guys to hear how he's applied his authentic self to his business and really expanded what he's been able to build because of that. Before we get into this, though, I want to just give a quick shout out to my website, samknickerbocker.com. It is still under construction, but that's okay. Go and check it out. And then also take a screenshot of this episode as you're listening, post on social media, and I'll give you a shout out on my podcast. My last week's podcast last Friday, my guest Tristan Chiklowski, his episode is just blowing up. Tons of people are loving the content that he shares and how we are able to really get in deep to a lot of the personal relationship actually, and how we can really grow together and make sure that we're all on the same page, communication, just a ton of things that were covered there. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go back and listen to it. I think it's episode 58. Definitely going to change your life when you listen to that. So let's jump right in when it comes to being authentic. So what situations would you be authentic and what situations maybe you wouldn't be authentic in? And this is something that we have to think about. When am I my most authentic self? And some people would say, oh, well, when I'm by myself, that's my most authentic self. And that may be true. I've just experienced a lot of different people in my life. And the most authentic self you're going to get is somebody who's kind of at their breaking point of stress, or of pure joy, elation, something where a more natural emotion has overcome. Even when you're by yourself, oftentimes we moderate our lives when we're by ourselves because we don't actually want to get to know ourselves that much. And so we'll listen to music, we'll listen to podcasts. Maybe that's why you're listening to this right now. If that's the case, turn this off and get comfortable with yourself. It's really important to have a relationship with yourself and really be willing to identify who you are in all aspects, all the things you don't like about yourself, all the things you do like about yourself. Maybe all those experiences of trauma that have happened that you've kind of just blacked out of your mind because you don't want them to be part of you. All of those things play into who you are. And at any point in time when you're not recognizing all of those pain points in your life or all of those high points, the joy points, then you're not really able to be your authentic self. And that's really what I think is so key right now when we're talking about being our authentic self. It starts with being authentic with yourself. You have to identify your identity. You have to really be willing to dive into who you are as an individual so that you can actually be that individual for other people. The problem is we don't like ourselves. We often are the harshest and our worst critics to ourselves. And what's interesting about the critical side of ourselves is we are forcing judgment on ourselves that we perceive other people would think of us. But in reality, those people aren't thinking about us. They aren't judging us. A good example of this is the other day, I had like a little fat lip And because of I don't know what it was, a bump or sucked on my lip when I slept, whatever it was, but it felt fat to me, but it wasn't fat to anybody else. And so I'm walking around feeling like I've got this big fat thing on my face. And the reality is I don't have anything on my face. And I had mentioned it to a colleague of mine and said, oh yeah, it's hard to talk with this big thing on my face. And they're like, I don't see anything, right? But because I was self-judging myself, I felt like everybody else was looking at me because I could feel it. I was really self-conscious of this one thing. Then I was not able to be my pure, authentic self because I was living in a world of perceived judgment of others, which isn't really who I am. And so that's an interesting thing when we're talking about our authentic selves. We have to be comfortable with who we are and what we can add to the conversation, what we can add to society, what we can add to our relationships. When we step into true authenticity, it doesn't matter who around us is supporting us, who's adding value to our life, who's taking away value to our lives. We are going to be at a good point, really what I consider ground floor, and we're able to stay grounded because we know who we are. If we don't ever experience who we actually are, then it's really hard to deliver for other people. It's really hard to even make commitments and keep them because we don't know if we're even able to make commitments because we haven't identified what our gifts are and what we are actually able to do, our capacity to focus, understand, comprehend, all these different things. And so that's where it starts, is being authentic with yourself. And that's a process. I would say I'm still in the process of identifying myself. I think there's always going to be things that there's always going to be things in our life that we are going through and reprocessing. There's tons of experiences in my life that I thought I processed 5 or 6 years ago, that as my light and knowledge and mindset grows, well, I'm able to go back and revisit all of these topics and actually review them and make them even better in my mind. So even something that you feel like you've already dealt with, you've already processed, you've already overcome, as you continue to grow as an individual, you're going to keep going back to that experience and keep making that experience even better. You're going to keep overcoming it even more and turning it into a PowerPoint in your life so you can actually use it for your growth rather than something that's holding you back. So there's really focusing on what's the benefit of all of my life experience as a whole. And so that is one thing that I've really focused on is learning about my authentic self. And there's the funny thing that a lot of people ask, a lot of coaches, I think I've asked you this. I mean, I think I've talked about this on my podcast before, but the idea of if the next 5 years are the same as the last 5 years, are you going to be satisfied with that result? And on the one hand, no. I mean, if the circumstances are the same over the next 5 years as they were over the last 5 years, no, I will not be satisfied. However, I don't take that question from that perspective. The way I interpret that question is, if you, Samuel, don't like, if the last 5 years are like the next 5 years for you as an individual and your growth patterns, are you going to be satisfied? And for me, that's an absolute yes, right? I am growing at an exponential rate, which means right now I'm experiencing this little growth right here, but it's going like this right now. And so if I keep on this same growth pattern over my lifetime and over the next 5 years, I'm going to be so much more progressed. My income will expound. Everything will grow simply because I continue to grow. So my growth pattern, I hope absolutely does flip over the next 5 years and just stay consistent. I mean, it could get even sharper and I'd be okay with that, but I definitely am not going to be unsatisfied with myself for growing constantly every day, thinking, how can I become better? And that's what I think we have to focus on when it becomes to our authentic selves, are not the circumstances around us, not the things that are around us, but who are we as an individual and how are we showing up? And when this comes into relationships, it's crucial to be your authentic self. We were sitting around the dinner table last night with our family and we were telling stories about when I first met my wife and some of the things that I had said and the way I respond. And my wife was like, oh yeah, I remember this story where it was like first, or I don't know, maybe 6th or 7th date actually. We were at some basketball game and my wife was maneuvering herself and she elbowed my arm and it hurt really bad. And so for me, I kind of was like, hey man, you could have asked me to move. It would have been really easy. And I'm very direct. I'm always in the moment, very who I am. Well, she was a little bit intimidated by that because she thought I was actually upset. And it wasn't that I was upset. I just felt pain. I expressed pain. I expressed how I felt in that moment. And then I moved on. So I was able to deliver my full authentic self without carrying that over into like this boiling steam that she thought I was, because that's her experience when people in her life had responded the way I responded. And previously that meant that they were going to be mad for a few more minutes or even the rest of the evening about that one little incident. For me, because I know who I am, I know what I stand for, then I could experience all of the discomfort right in that moment and then move on. And it was just like it never happened, because I was able to really identify what was important to me and express my feelings and then move on. And so learning to be your authentic self is crucial in a relationship. It's one of the things that enabled my wife and I to get off on such a great foot in the beginning of our relationship, first date. And we went to it was like an orchestra concert, and I'm a very direct person. So we had some decent conversation during the orchestra thing, but then after, we decided to go for a walk through the mall. And the first question I asked her was, hey, what are all the things, all of your frustrations that you've disliked about dating? For me, that's important. So I know, one, so how to avoid some of those pitfalls. And two, maybe she's frustrated about things that are definitely part of my personality and I'm not going to give up, in which case I know, hey, this isn't going to work out right away. And so I just went straight for the deeper conversation, straight for the question. And she unloaded, man. She really had a lot to say. It took us about 4 hours to really get to the point where we were sharing evenly about our experience, and then moving forward and deciding, yeah, this is something we want to do again. And by the end of the date, I just told her, right at the very end of the date, hey, if I don't get to go on another date with you, I would be devastated, right? If you don't let me take you out, I'd be devastated. And because I was willing to say that, that was like the biggest butterfly moment of the whole night for her, when she's like, man, I love Sam because he actually tells me what he's thinking, right? And that my ability to be absolutely certain about who I was and what I was looking for enabled me to be 100% for her, and brought our relationship a lot closer, quicker, because I was able to be my authentic self. There was no pretense. There was no hiding behind things. Even in our conversation, just as I mentioned on Friday in that episode, if you didn't get to listen to it, go back and listen to it. But when people ask me questions, I had learned by this point to ask them how much information they wanted. And so I did ask my wife, then Charlie, the girl I was dating, on our first date. She would ask me questions like, how much information do you want? And some questions she was like, yeah, just give it all to me. Some questions she said, well, maybe just the basics for right now, just give me some milk. We'll work up to some honey and we'll work up to some meat. Right. But that, because I know about myself and I was willing to just share everything, I've learned to moderate what I'm willing and what people want to hear. And so I ask myself that, okay, that's great. How direct do you want me to be? How open do you want me to be? How much information do you want? And by doing so, they know, wow, he's willing to tell me everything. I get to decide how much I want. And that only comes from knowing everything about yourself, or at least knowing a great deal about yourself. You can't be authentic without really identifying who you are. So that's why this episode is really all about identifying your identity and why it's so important. Once you identify your identity, then you can step into true authenticity with other people. Until you know who you are, you can't really be authentic to anybody. You're always going to be living in a shadow of other people's perceptions, or worse, your perceptions of what you think other people's perceptions are, which is a complete joke, because most of them don't even have any ideas or perceptions about you. And in fact, this is another thing we talked about on Friday, but when I wanted to find out how people perceived me, how people viewed me, what they thought I was good at, then I actually went and asked them, hey, could you write down the top 5 reasons you think I'm going to be wildly successful in life? What's going to give me the most success? And I just straight up asked people how they perceived me. It was easier than wondering how they perceived me. I just went and asked them, hey, how do you perceive what I'm doing right now? How do you perceive my career? How do you perceive X, Y, and Z? And then I knew at least their perceptions. It didn't mean I had to accept them or live to them, but at least I knew what they were, right? Most people, they're too scared to even ask for feedback, so they never actually find out how they're being perceived. And so my advice, it would be, go and ask people how you're perceived. Be willing to surrender any judgment or fear from this. Don't accept what they say as truth. Accept it as their opinion, and that's interesting. And then it's up to you to decide, hey, do I like that quality? Do I like showing up that way? Or do I not like showing up that way? If you don't like showing up that way, then change. But if you love how you show up and people say, hey, this is what I've noticed, and I'm like, yep, that's me, right? for me, it's a very often feedback of, Sam, you're very direct and kind of intimidating, right? I don't necessarily love the fact that I'm intimidating or that people don't like my directness, but I do love it for myself. And I would rather be direct, open, and honest than sugarcoat something, potentially leave room for gray area or misunderstanding, and then get caught up in a misunderstanding. I'd rather people know what I think, even if it's a little harsh, than just wonder what I think without, and then being based off of what they think I think, making choices that don't serve me or them. And so that's my advice for you today. Your homework, I guess you could say, is go ask 5 or 6 people, people who love you, the people who hate you, all of it. Ask them, hey, what are the top 5 perceptions and top 5 things you think of when you think of me? How do you see me as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a son, as a daughter, as a businessman, whatever it is? How do you see me? And then from those lists of things, just say, hey, do I like this quality? Do I not like this quality? It's up to you to decide, and you're in control of who you are and what the outcome is. So just remember that. What we're here to determine is, do you know who you are? Once you find out who you are, then you can actually make progress. Until you know who you are, it's really difficult to move and get anywhere. So that is it for today. But definitely, again, go check out the website, samknickerbocker.com. I will for sure have my webinar live this week because I just got a new camera to record everything. So super excited about that. But it'll be much better quality of recording. And that's really what I was waiting for, to make sure that the quality is a little bit better for those who are viewing it. And then lastly, we are looking for people who could test out the ebook. So direct message me on Instagram or Facebook. I would love to get your reviews on the ebook to throw them up on my website. So for the first 5 people who direct message me and want access to that ebook, I will throw your name up there with your profession underneath your name, so we can get you a little bit of recognition there on the website for all those who are coming to review the book as well. And then don't forget to take a screenshot of you listening to this, post it on social media, tag myself in it, and I will give you a shout out for your business as well on the next podcast. So have a wonderful day, and don't forget to fuel your legacy today. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.